Well, now we go to our feature of the night. Over the weekend, the streets of London were filled with placards welcoming refugees into the UK. The rally brought out huge crowds, including the new Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Yasmin Khatun went along to find out more.
Around 100,000 demonstrators have come out here today to euphoric scenes as new Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn joins them to say refugees are welcome here in Britain. Straight from giving his victory speech at the QE2, Jeremy Corbyn joined the rally in a show of solidarity.
So today here in Parliament Square, we as ordinary decent people stand up and say to our government, recognise your obligations in law. That would be good. Recognise your obligations to help people, which you're required to do by law. That would be good. But above all, open your hearts and open your minds and open your attitude towards supporting people who are desperate, who need somewhere safe to live, want to contribute to our society and are human beings just like all of us. Together in peace, together in justice, together in humanity.
Prime Minister David Cameron has been criticised for his staunch policy towards refugees, with the UK so far taking in only 216 Syrians under a UN-backed relocation scheme, and about 5,000 other Syrians who made their own way to Britain granted asylum. Cameron recently announced to Parliament that the UK would be taking in 20,000 refugees over the next 5 years. About 450,000 people, mostly Syrian, have made their way to Germany this year, with many commentators asking as to why Britain isn't doing more, with Syria's neighbours, Turkey and Lebanon, currently housing millions. Can you tell me why you've come out here today to join this demonstration?
Yeah, I came here because I feel our government has basically lost its humanity. It shows in several ways. They're far more keen on subsidising arms traders and hosting this huge arms fair than they are in helping the refugees that have been destroyed by, or whose homes have been destroyed and livelihoods have been destroyed by the very same arms. And I just can't stand the hypocrisy.
You're here with your family today at this demonstration. Tell me why have you come out here today?
I've come out to make it clear that many people, including myself, that live in the UK, think that we should open our doors to people who are escaping war, conflict and persecution. It's basic humanity, and lots of people here, as you can see, believe that that's what this government should do.
It's really wonderful to feel a massive swell from among normal people to want to be here and to want to show what our country isn't showing on the political stage. We can just show it by doing this. It's just one small thing that a person can do, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's about being compelled to, rather than just reading about it and thinking about it, it's about acting on it and coming out, and there being people on the street literally representing the views of what people around the country are feeling, and the fact that the government aren't acting on it. So this is the only way that we can enable that change, hopefully. And we heard news earlier today that the new Labour leader is Jeremy Corbyn. What do you make of that?
Welcome, Jeremy Corbyn!
I mean, it's amazing. I think it's like this now will mean that there'll be some kind of huge shift, I think, in the way of in how this country and actually globally how people are feeling about the kind of state of the world. I think it's a really incredible thing, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the impact that it's going to have, which will be a huge one.
The crowds at the demo chanted slogans of support for refugees and ones of dismay at their current treatment.
This is a People's Inspire march. It is wonderful that people come in force to say we want to welcome the refugees and to send a clear message to the David Cameron government that we have a moral and a legal obligation towards the refugees, that our countries have been responsible because of their misguided policies and their illegal wars. They have been responsible for creating this refugee crisis, and therefore we need to do what is necessary to help them and to welcome them in our home. And it is not right for the Prime Minister to have unilateral policies towards the refugees, but that he should have a policy in coordination with the rest of Europe. As well, it's important that world leaders give sufficient funding to the United Nations World Food Program to help the refugees in Lebanon, in Turkey, in other countries who are desperate and who are living terrible lives.
For a long time, any expression of solidarity with people has been seen as for losers. This has been going on in my country since the 1990s. And today, with the election of Jeremy Corbyn, this is a sign that that is changing, you know, because it's not only refugees who've been sort of cast out and made to look bad, it's anybody who needs help. It's people who have to claim benefits because they've lost their jobs or can't work, disabled people, so-called illegal immigrants. You know, there's been a demonisation of anybody who needs help.
Dr. Najjar, you've come out here today, your family are here as well. How does it make you feel to see the crowds who have come here for this demonstration?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks to Islam Channel for covering this event. As I said, seeing this mass number of people coming to demonstrate and show solidarity and sympathy with the Syrian people has given me a little bit of hope, and that reaffirms my trust in humanity. We sympathize and we would love to help these refugees who took the time and went through dangers with their babies and children to cross Europe and arrive safely in one of the Western European countries. But at the same time, my heart is in Syria, with those who are left behind. My heart is with those who lack medicine, who are under siege for a couple of years. My heart is with those who are under real suffering, for those who are crying over their babies, who are being put to pieces. A daily bombardment on these innocent people. Every bomb can destroy a whole area and put all these huge buildings with the humans into pieces.
20,000 refugees being welcomed into this country is nowhere near enough. And the message that you're getting here, loud and clear, from many, many thousands of people, is that refugees are welcome here. And that's what ordinary people want. Ordinary people want to welcome people who are struggling in Syria and in other parts of the world. And I and thousands here are making that message absolutely loud and clear. Refugees are welcome here.
Close Calais and put the people here. I want to announce the rally.
It's almost 5 o'clock and crowds are beginning to disperse. The final speeches are taking place right behind me. But if we go by the numbers that turned out today, refugees are most certainly welcome here in the UK. Yasmin Khatun, the reports.
Well, joining me to discuss all that is Habib Rahman, who's Chief Executive at the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants, and still with us from the first part of the programme is Talha Ahmad from the Muslim Council of Britain. Welcome to the programme, Habib. That demonstration was a huge demonstration, but it strikes me that there's a much broader, deeper public sympathy even than was on show on Saturday around refugees now. That's a big turnaround in public response. Why and how do you think it happened?
But it shows that it's touched, the whole crisis has touched the hearts and minds of people of Britain, and they opened their hearts and minds. But unfortunately, as we have seen the people's comments there, our government, unfortunately, has not reciprocated to that. It's not just the march, and you are right in saying that. We saw the Congress poll came out. Overwhelming majority of people wants to accept more refugees here, and only 24% of the people do not want. So government should pay heed to this and give more help to refugees and take a fair share of refugees coming to not only our shores, in European shores. And your report says there may be about 1 million refugees in jeopardy, and they are coming to Europe. Germany, Angela Merkel has showed the leadership and said that she will take the fair share of refugees. David Cameron and our government, for the people, must show that humanity and take a fair share of refugees in Britain.
Do you think that the government's decision, 20,000 refugees over 5 years, the Germans are taking in that number over a weekend, do you think that's an adequate response to this turn in the public mood?
Before I do that, I think we need to recognise that government has changed its position significantly. I was part of a programme called Sanctuary Project by the Citizens UK, and we were trying to persuade government to accept 1,500 refugees, and so they were not prepared to do that. So from that position to 20,000 is a significant change. It is not enough, nothing near enough. But we need to recognise that government has changed its position, and we need to give them credit. But the reason they have changed is because of the pressure that has been created on them through MPs from their own party, from Tory party, as well as from people. And yesterday, on Saturday's demonstration, it was just magnificent. I was there from 11:30, and I walked past almost a mile of the crowd, and it was so heartening to see people of all colour, all ages, of all kind, turned up. So it was phenomenal. Is government doing enough? Absolutely not. First and foremost, we are one of the richest countries. So this argument that we don't have the infrastructure, the argument that we don't have the funds and so on, they simply do not stand up. Lebanon is a country that is still reeling from the ruins of war. They have taken almost as many, well, almost 1/3 of their population now are refugees from Syria. Turkey, again, not a hugely rich country, has taken in excess of 2 million people. Iraq, a war-torn country, has taken refugees. So for one of the richest countries on earth to say that 20,000, and those would be handpicked by them, not those who are in destitution, who are at risk in harm's way, but those who are in various shelters, it is nowhere near enough. And what saddens me is two things. One is that this week, BBC was airing a program called Bleed Cities, which brought home the memories of Second World War, where various cities were bombed and broken apart. So for a generation of British people, the savage of war and the tragedy it causes and the pain it causes is actually alive and real. And they understand the pain of being in that situation. And so as a nation which experienced that, we want to welcome people. But more importantly, we're a global leading nation. We need to lead the world into sanity, into civilization, into good thing. And what we're doing today, we're not leading. We're trailing far, far behind compared with other countries.
Yes, the point, the government has changed its position. And you're right in saying that because of the public pressure, because we have seen in the last 2 weeks the government movement. But for your audience, to make them understand that we take as Britain just naturally about 25,000 refugees last few years, average. And the government is talking about that change position is in 4.5 years, 20,000 refugees. And they will turn around. They're playing politics with the public. And British public are not foolish. They understand what's going on. So just tell the people to understand that they will turn around in 4 years' time. Naturally, they will take some refugees here, and they say, we have filled our 20,000 quota, and we have taken 20,000 refugees from that area. So we cannot let that happen. We must put pressure on government. They take the fair share of burden of refugees, because these people are fleeing from destruction and war, and some of it is created. We are responsible for it, and we have to be careful and then give these people, it touches people's humanity. And we are encouraged by the Labour leadership and Jeremy Corbyn in the piece come out that openly, talking about people has opened their mind, and government must heed to that. That for sake of humanity, give home to not 20,000. We are a strong nation, and you are right, Talha, that we should take a fair share of it. It comes to 200,000. We should be able. People are in the programs we have seen. They're talking about we'll open our houses for refugees, these children, and this. The people, those who are fleeing from destruction. So we should respond to that properly.
Let me just ask you, because you mentioned, that the government seems to be playing politics with this, and halfway through this crisis, I mean, obviously they were badly wrong-footed by the public mood. They misread that, didn't understand it. But then sort of 24 hours, 48 hours into that crisis, they kind of got a line, and the line was this. Yes, we're changing our mind, but the real thing we've got to do is we've got to deal with the Islamic State. This is the source of the problem. David Cameron is in Lebanon today. He's just issued a statement saying, I'm going to go ahead with a vote to bomb Syria. What do you make of putting those things together?
Of the problem the government created for itself is that the immigration policy over the last few years has been so shambolic and so driven by lack of empathy and respect. And now, obviously, the migrant crisis. Remember, before those refugee crisis, there are migrants coming in hundreds and so on. And that was handled very badly to demonize people in a way that we haven't seen before. And as a result, when the refugee crisis came, it was difficult for government to change suddenly because they created that difficulty. That made a problem. But the other problem they also have is that what they've done on this 20,000, I just want to add to what Habib said, is that this 20,000 would be marred by bureaucracy and, and all sorts of other nightmares. And we may end up, in fact, government did agree to take, I think, 1,250 refugees through the UN program, and they only took 215. So what it shows is that through that program, they might actually end up taking far less than 20,000 that they're saying they will take. And so for many people will therefore beg the question, is our Prime Minister genuine in accepting refugees, especially when he now goes to Lebanon and gives that statement without actually doing anything, if he had taken, out of say 20,000 he promised, 5,000 roughly a year, if he had taken say 3,000 already and then made that visit, then we could have been slightly more reassured that they're genuine. But at the moment, it seems all PR.
Just running out of time, I want to get a last response from Habib. What do you make of this government?
The issues on bombing and the refugees are different. These are the people fleeing from destruction, war, and created in that area we are talking about, Syria and that peninsula. And there are also people from Africa, what's going on in there. And refugees are refugees under convention reasons. We know that why people are fleeing, and this should not be mixed up. What government is trying, again, playing politics about it, and bombing is not the solution. Everyone knows, and everyone is clear.
Create more refugees.
Yeah, or create more refugees. And the Islamic State, we all, those who are right-minded people, think they're abhorrent what's going on in there. But this is the byproduct of bombing. So the bombing is not the solution. First, separate it out, deal with refugee problem, and bombing is a separate thing. And politicians should decide politically and clearly, with clear thinking, what they should do.
Stop you both there. Habib Rahman, the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants, and Talha Ahmad from the MCP. Thanks very much for coming in. But I'm afraid that's all we've got time for on this episode of The Report. I want to thank all my guests on today's show and to thank you for taking the time to watch. Do remember you can keep up with us on Twitter by following @IslamChannelCA and by using the hashtag #TheReport. But for now, we'll leave you with some scenes also from London, where over the weekend, protesters from Hizb ut-Tahrir held a solidarity rally outside the Bangladesh embassy. They're demanding the release of 2 of their female activists in Bangladesh. They were arrested last month for inviting an online Islamic conference entitled Emerging Khalifa, the Inevitable Transformation of Bangladesh's Politics and Economy. Well, do join us for The Report tomorrow at the same time, but until then, good night.
And across the globe.